All right, so naming hydrates. The way that we name hydrates, is as follows. The first part is that we just name the ionic or covalent compound using their conventional naming method. The second step here is to determine the number of water molecules in the compound. So the coefficient in front of the water is the number of water molecules present. Now, prefixes are used to represent the number of water molecules present. Now, I'm not going to write this down, but these prefixes that are used are the same prefixes used to name covalent compounds. Now, once the prefix is named, tacked on to that end of the prefix is the suffix hydrate. All right, so let's try these steps in a couple examples. We want to know the name of CaCl2. So CaCl2, the first thing that you should be asking yourself, is this an ionic or covalent compound? Well, it's ionic. So the first thing that we do is we look at the first element. The first element is Ca. We find Ca on the periodic table and that first element. Remember, there's no change. We just write that down on the periodic table. So the first element, if you didn't see there, was calcium. Now, remember, the second thing in our ionic substance does get a modified ending. So yes, you could look up Cl, and Cl has the name of chlorine, but because it's listed second, or it's the anion, you need to turn to that ion formula sheet in your packet, and if you find Cl, it is not chlorine, it is chloride. Remember, we chop off that ending and add IDE. So we have the formula for CaCl2, or the name to be calcium chloride. Now we worry about this business of this attached water. Well, if you remember, the number in front has to be represented by a prefix. Well, there's no number, so we assume that we have one. We assume that we have one H2O. Okay? Well, we look on our prefix chart, and again, these are the prefix for covalent compounds, and they're also the prefix used to name hydrates. We look and we find the prefix of 1 to represent mono. So we write that prefix mono down, and then the steps say, hey, after the prefix mono, or after the prefix, you need to add in the word hydrate. So CaCl2 dot H2O becomes calcium chloride monohydrate. Now let's go backwards. Let's go from the name to the formula. So we have copper 2 sulfate pentahydrate. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to identify, well, what is the formula for copper 2 sulfate? So again, copper. If we look this up on the periodic table, copper has the element symbol Cu. The 2 represents that it has a 2+ charge. Now sulfate, you can spend all day looking for sulfate on the periodic table. You will not find it because it is a polyatomic ion. So sulfate is SO4 2-. Now, when we form this formula, it becomes CaSO4. I write that down, CuSO4. Now we draw a dot because it's a hydrate, and then we have to look up what is the prefix penta standing for. And so the numerical value of penta is 5. So we put 5s, and now remember, hydrates represent water. So we write down H2O. So our formula for copper 2 sulfate pentahydrate becomes CuSO4.5H2O. All right, so now we want to transition a little bit, and we want to follow the steps to be able to calculate the formula of a hydrate.